Script. Welcome to Mystic Secrets, where stories come alive, teaching us about humanity, compassion, and the mysteries that bind us all. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, sit back, and let's dive into a tale that will touch your heart. This is the story of a billionaire's last dying wish, and how a simple black maid's presence changed everything. The sun was setting behind the tall glass walls of the Montgomery estate, one of the grandest mansions in the city. Inside the massive halls, doctors, nurses, and worried family members gathered quietly. At the heart of it all lay Richard Montgomery, the billionaire tycoon, a man who had once commanded empires, built industries, and had his name etched across skyscrapers. But now, he was frail, his breathing shallow, his once booming voice reduced to whispers. The Montgomery family had gathered. His son, Charles, stood stiffly at the edge of the bed, his wife clutching a silk handkerchief to her nose, dabbing at non-existent tears. Other relatives whispered about inheritance, assets, and who would control the empire when Richard was gone. Yet, Richard's eyes weren't on them. His gaze, weak but piercing, searched beyond the glitter of diamonds, the expensive perfumes, and the coldness of wealth. He coughed lightly, then whispered something that made the room fall silent. "Bring me her." Charles frowned. "Who, father?" "The lawyer, Pastor Daniels." "Who do you mean?" Richard shook his head slowly. "No, not them. I want Maria." A murmur swept through the family. Maria, the black maid, the woman who had quietly served the Montgomery household for over 2 decades. The woman no one really noticed. To them, she was invisible, present only to clean up after their banquets, polish the floors, and ensure the glasses sparkled during their grand parties. "Father," Charles said sharply, "you must be confused. Why would you want the maid here, of all people? We should focus on your comfort." Richard's voice was weak but firm. "I said, bring Maria. It's my dying wish." The family exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some scoffed, others muttered under their breath. But the weight of a dying man's request couldn't be ignored. A nurse quietly slipped out of the room and went down the servants' wing of the mansion. Maria was there, folding freshly washed linens with her usual quiet grace. She was in her early 50s, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes soft but filled with wisdom. When the nurse told her that Mr. Montgomery wanted to see her, she hesitated, confused. Billionaires didn't usually summon their maids at such a moment. But she set down the linens, wiped her hands on her apron, and made her way upstairs. When Maria stepped into the grand bedroom, every pair of eyes turned to her, cold and judging. Charles sneered slightly. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Why would father want her here?" But Richard's face softened for the first time that day. His lips curved into the faintest smile, his frail hand trembling as he reached out. "Maria," he whispered, "come closer." She walked slowly to his bedside, bowing her head slightly out of respect. "Yes, sir," she said softly, her voice calm, yet carrying the weight of years of silent endurance. Richard's hand clasped hers, fragile but desperate. "Maria, I need to tell you, thank you." The room went silent. The family shifted uncomfortably, clearly not understanding. Maria blinked, startled. "Sir, what do you mean?" Richard coughed again, the nurse leaning in to adjust his oxygen. With effort, he continued. "All these years, they only saw me as money, as power. But you saw me as a man. You were the only one who ever spoke to me with kindness, not fear, not greed. Do you remember, 20 years ago, when I lost Margaret, my wife?" Maria nodded slowly. She remembered vividly. The house had been filled with people offering fake condolences, trying to console the billionaire while keeping an eye on their own opportunities. But Maria had simply brought him tea, sat with him in silence, and whispered, "You're not alone, sir. Pain doesn't care about money, but neither does kindness." Richard's eyes welled with tears. "That night, you saved me. I was ready to end it all. I had the pills in my hand. But then, you knocked on the door. You said those words, and I put them away." His voice cracked. "I never told anyone, but Maria, you kept me alive." Gasps filled the room. Charles looked horrified, while the others exchanged shocked glances. They had never heard this before. Maria's own eyes glistened, but she kept her composure. "I only did what was right, sir. You were hurting. Anyone would have." "No," Richard interrupted weakly, squeezing her hand tighter. "No one else did, not even my own blood. You did, and I need you to know, I never forgot. Silence. The family members shuffled, embarrassed, unable to meet Maria's eyes. For years, they had dismissed her presence, treating her as nothing more than background. But here, in his final moments, the billionaire's heart clung not to them, but to her. Richard coughed again, struggling to breathe. Maria, I need to confess something. She leaned closer. Yes, sir. His voice trembled. I was cruel to you. I let my children, my guests, treat you like you were nothing. I should have defended you, honored you, but I didn't. And yet, you stayed. You stayed when you could have left. Maria's lips trembled, her heart heavy with memories of the insults, the arrogance of the wealthy guests, the way she was often spoken to like dirt. But she also remembered why she stayed. She looked at him softly and said, because deep down, sir, I saw you. The man behind the wealth. I knew, there was kindness in you, even if the world tried to bury it. Tears streamed down Richard's cheeks. His breathing grew ragged. Maria, please, forgive me. The room grew unbearably quiet. The family stared, unsure what to say, their own greed and selfishness exposed in the most painful way. Maria clasped both his hands gently and whispered, I forgave you a long time ago, sir. I never held hate in my heart. Only hope that one day, you'd see me as I truly am. A broken smile spread across Richard's face. Relief. Peace. For the first time in decades, the weight of regret lifted from him. But then, he shocked everyone. With his last ounces of strength, he whispered, Charles, bring the lawyer. The family froze. Father, you need to rest, Charles protested. No, Richard rasped. Bring him, now. Within minutes, the family attorney arrived, briefcase in hand. The man hurried to Richard's bedside, clearly sensing the urgency. Richard's voice was faint but resolute. I want to change my will. Effective immediately. The relatives gasped. What? Charles's face turned red with fury. Father, you can't do this now. You're not in your right mind. But Richard's glare silenced him. His eyes, though weak, carried the authority of a man who had built empires. I know exactly what I'm doing. Write this down. The lawyer opened his papers, pen ready. Richard continued. To my children, I leave enough to be comfortable, but no more. They have lived their whole lives taking, never giving. Let them learn the value of earning. His eyes flicked to Charles, who looked like he was about to explode. And to Maria, his voice broke. He squeezed her hand again. To the woman who reminded me of my humanity, who showed me love when I was at my lowest, I leave the Montgomery estate, and 40% of my holdings. She deserves dignity, honor, and peace for the rest of her life. The room erupted. Shouts of disbelief, protests, cries of outrage filled the air. Charles stormed forward, his face twisted with anger. This is insane. She's just a maid. She doesn't deserve a penny. But Richard raised his trembling hand. No, Charles, she deserves everything. Because without her, there would be no me. And without her, this family will never learn what love means. With that, Richard leaned back, his strength fading. His eyes locked onto Maria's, a look of gratitude, love, and peace. Thank you for seeing me, he whispered. And with that final breath, Richard Montgomery, the billionaire, was gone. The family fell into chaos, shouting, arguing, trying to contest the will even as his body was still warm. But Maria didn't hear them. She sat by his side, holding his hand, tears falling silently down her cheeks. Not for the fortune he had left her, not for the power she now held, but for the man she had seen all along, finally at peace. Days later, when the news broke, the world was stunned. Headlines blazed. Billionaire leaves fortune to maid. Some criticized, some praised, but those who truly understood knew the truth. Wealth had not been the legacy Richard Montgomery left behind. It was the lesson that love, kindness, and humanity mattered more than all the gold in the world. Maria continued to live in the estate, not with extravagance, but with humility. She opened charities, funded schools, and built homes for the poor. And whenever anyone asked why she gave so much, she simply smiled and said, because someone once reminded me that love is worth more than money. And I promised to carry that forward. And that, dear listeners, is the story of a billionaire's last dying wish, and the maid who changed everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mystic Secrets, where we bring you tales that remind us of the hidden truths within humanity. Because sometimes, the most powerful secrets aren't locked in vaults of gold, but in the hearts of those we least expect.